How many times today have you reacted without thinking? Scrolled past something that annoyed you and fired off a quick comment, saw a message that rubbed you the wrong way and immediately typed a response. Felt a surge of frustration and let it dictate your next move. We live in an age of instant reactions where every emotion demands an outlet, every thought feels urgent, and patience has become a forgotten skill. But what if I told you that the most powerful responses aren't the fastest ones? That the ability to pause, to wait, to let the initial wave of emotion pass before acting isn't just a virtue, but a superpower. The Stoics knew this better than anyone. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king himself, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That strength isn't in the heat of the moment. It's in the quiet space between stimulus and response, where true control is born. Think about the last time you regretted something you said or did in haste. Maybe it was a snapped reply, a rushed decision, or an impulsive purchase. Now imagine if you'd given yourself just 10 more seconds, a single breath to detach, to observe the emotion without being ruled by it. That's the essence of Stoic discipline, not suppressing feelings, but mastering the art of when to act on them. This video is about reclaiming that lost art. It's about why waiting isn't passive, it's strategic. Why the pause you take today can win battles you haven't even seen coming. Because the Stoics didn't just preach patience, they weaponized it. They turned delay into a tool for clarity, emotional resilience, and unbeatable judgment. So if you've ever felt like life is a series of knee-jerk reactions where you're constantly putting out fires you accidentally started, this is your invitation to step off that treadmill. Over the next few minutes, we'll explore how Stoic principles like cognitive detachment and intentional pause can transform not just how you respond to challenges, but how you see them entirely. This isn't about moving slower, it's about acting wiser. And by the end, you'll understand why the greatest victories aren't seized in haste, they're cultivated in patience. Let's begin. The Stoics saw time differently than most of us do today. While modern life treats time as something to fill, scrolling, reacting, rushing from one thing to the next, the Stoics treated it as the most precious resource we have. Seneca, one of the greatest Stoic thinkers, put it bluntly, "Life is long if you know how to use it." That might sound surprising in an era where we're constantly told there aren't enough hours in the day. But Seneca wasn't talking about quantity. He meant that wasting time on impulsive reactions, emotional turbulence, or trivial conflicts robs us of the depth and meaning our days could hold. Imagine two people facing the same frustrating email from a coworker. One fires off an angry reply the second they finish reading it. The other closes their laptop, takes a walk, and revisits the message an hour later with fresh eyes. Who truly used their time better? The Stoics would argue it's the one who paused, not because they delayed action, but because they chose the most effective moment to act. This philosophy flips our modern obsession with speed on its head. We've been conditioned to believe faster equals better. Quick replies signal professionalism. Rapid decisions demonstrate confidence. But the Stoics measured time not in minutes saved, but in clarity gained. Think about a heated meeting where tensions rise. The impulsive reaction might be to interrupt, defend your position, or even escalate the conflict. But what if instead you applied Seneca's lens? Those seconds of silence where you resist the urge to jump in aren't passive. They're an investment. You're trading a fleeting moment of emotional release for a response that actually moves the conversation forward. History's most effective leaders, from Marcus Aurelius to modern CEOs who practice Stoic principles, understand this. The person who controls the tempo of their reactions controls the outcome. Here's where Stoic mindfulness separates itself from generic advice to just calm down. It's not about suppressing emotions, it's about redistributing time. When you feel that familiar surge of irritation in traffic or during a disagreement, that's your signal. This is where the Stoic pause earns its value. Instead of letting the emotion dictate your next words or actions, you create space. Not hours or days, often just 10 conscious seconds to ask, will reacting now serve me, or will waiting? This simple shift transforms time from something that slips through our fingers into a tool we wield. Every delayed reaction is a reclaiming of agency. And in that delay lies an unexpected superpower. The world moves fast, but you don't have to match its speed to navigate it successfully. In fact, the opposite is true. The slower you react with intention, the faster you'll reach the outcomes that matter. Picture this: you're scrolling through your feed when you see a post that makes your blood boil. Maybe it's a political jab, a smug comment from an acquaintance, or someone dismissing an issue you care about deeply. Your fingers hover over the keyboard, ready to unleash a reply that'll put them in their place. But here's the Stoic twist. What if that surge of anger isn't caused by the post at all? Epictetus, the former slave turned philosopher, laid it out plainly 2,000 years ago. It's not things that upset us, but our opinions about them. That post didn't create your reaction, your interpretation of it did. And that realization changes everything. This is where emotional detachment becomes your secret weapon. Notice the word isn't suppression or indifference, it's detachment. The Stoics weren't telling you to stop feeling. They were teaching you to observe those feelings without letting them hijack your actions. Imagine your emotions as weather patterns passing through. You wouldn't blame the sky for raining, and you wouldn't try to stop the storm with your bare hands. You'd wait it out, maybe grab an umbrella. Social media outrage works the same way. That initial flare of anger, it's just weather. The power comes in choosing not to dance in the storm. Let's make this practical. Next time you feel that familiar heat rising, whether it's from a comment online, a snippy email, or a rude remark, try this 3-step pause. First, label the emotion. This is frustration, or this is pride feeling wounded. Just naming it creates instant space between you and the reaction. Second, ask Epictetus' question. Is this event harming me, or is it my judgment about the event? 90% of the time, you'll realize the actual offense is tiny. It's the story you're telling yourself that's fueling the fire. Third, fast forward. Picture yourself 24 hours from now. Will this response matter? Will you be proud of it? That pause is where your power lies. History's greatest Stoics turned this practice into an art form. When Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal from his closest ally, he didn't lash out. He wrote in his private journal, "Choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed and you haven't been." That's not passive, it's profoundly strategic. By refusing to let others dictate his emotional state, he maintained clarity when others lost theirs. In your daily life, this might look like letting a cutting remark slide during a meeting, or not engaging with that inflammatory tweet. Not because you didn't notice, but because you chose where to invest your energy. The beauty of this approach, it scales. What works for minor irritations also works for major crises. A business owner using Stoic principles might wait 72 hours before responding to a public relations disaster, not out of indecision, but to ensure their response isn't clouded by initial panic. A parent might count to 10 before disciplining a child, separating their fatigue from their parenting. Even professional athletes use versions of this. Basketball legend Michael Jordan famously paused before trash talking back, using the delay to assess whether reacting would throw off his game or his opponents. This isn't about becoming emotionless, it's about becoming the curator of your responses. Every time you detach just enough to ask, is this reaction serving me? You're not avoiding conflict, you're ascending above it. The modern world will keep throwing sparks your way, but as the Stoics proved, you get to choose which sparks you fan into flames and which you let burn out on their own. That's the real superpower, not controlling what happens to you, but mastering what happens within you. Marcus Aurelius kept a journal not to record events, but to create space between experience and reaction. Every morning and night, he'd write not about what happened to him, but how he chose to interpret it. This wasn't just diary keeping, it was training. By slowing down his mental process, he built what modern psychologists call response inhibition, the ability to interrupt automatic reactions. Think of it like a mental circuit breaker. When someone insults you, your brain's first impulse is to hit back. The Stoic pause is that split second where you flip the switch, cutting off the primal reaction to create room for something better. Here's how to make this tangible. Next time you feel your pulse quicken, whether from a rude comment or a high-pressure demand, try this 4-step reset. First, physically still yourself. Stoics knew what science now confirms: motion fuels emotion. Clenching your fists or pacing feeds agitation, while stillness creates distance. Second, breathe like you're fogging a mirror. Slow exhales activate the parasympathetic nervous system, hitting the brakes on fight or flight mode. Third, ask, what part of this is truly within my control? The other person's behavior isn't. Your next move is. Fourth, borrow Marcus' journaling trick. Mentally draft 2 responses, one reactive, one reflective. The gap between them is where wisdom grows. This practice shines in high-stakes scenarios. Take negotiations where rushed answers cost millions. Former FBI hostage negotiator Chris Voss trains agents to embrace silence after provocations, not as weakness but as leverage. Those extra seconds reveal whether the other party's anger is strategic or sincere. Or consider parenting. Counting to 10 before disciplining isn't about delay. It's about differentiating the child's mistake from your own fatigue. Even social media arguments transform when you apply what programmer and writer Paul Graham calls the hierarchy of disagreement. React immediately, and you'll likely attack the person. Wait 10 minutes and you might counter their argument. Wait an hour and you could reframe the entire discussion. The brilliance of the pause principle is its scalability. For minor irritations, it might be 3 breaths. For major decisions, it could be 3 days. When Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella took over the struggling company, his first move wasn't a bold restructuring. It was instituting listening tours, creating deliberate pauses between leadership changes and action. The result, a $1 trillion turnaround. Similarly, the ancient Stoic practice of premeditatio malorum, imagining worst-case scenarios, wasn't pessimism, it was preemptive pausing. By mentally rehearsing challenges beforehand, they shortened reaction times when crises actually hit. This isn't about overthinking. It's about creating just enough friction to prevent thoughtless reactions from hijacking your life. Like a sculptor who steps back from the marble to see the whole shape, each pause lets you separate what's happening from what it means. The journalist who waits 30 seconds before sending a heated email preserves relationships. The surgeon who performs a timeout before incision saves lives. And you, in that moment when patience feels impossible, gain something far more valuable than the last word: self-possession. Because every mastered pause is a brick in the foundation of unshakable character, and unlike fleeting victories born of impulse, that's something no one can take from you. Consider the last time you were stuck in traffic. Horns blaring, minutes ticking by, that creeping frustration as lanes crawl forward inch by inch. Now, think about what actually worsens those situations, not the accident up ahead or the sheer volume of cars, but the drivers who react to the delay with aggression. The ones who weave between lanes, ride bumpers, or honk incessantly. Their panic doesn't clear the road, it amplifies the chaos. This is Stoicism's dichotomy of control in action. The traffic jam itself is outside your power, but your response to it. That's yours entirely. Epictetus drew a line between what he called externals and internals. Externals, other people's actions, delays, even societal injustices are like the weather. You can't command them, but you can always choose your stance toward them. Internals, your judgments, intentions, and reactions, are where true agency lies. Modern life bombards us with externals. A coworker takes credit for your idea, a flight gets cancelled, someone cuts you in line. The knee-jerk response is to fight the uncontrollable, to demand fairness from a world that owes us nothing. But the Stoic asks a different question. What would happen if, instead of resisting what I can't change, I invested that energy into what I can? Take customer service as an example. Two people receive the same defective product. One spends an hour ranting on social media, tagging the company, demanding immediate justice. The other calmly files a return, follows up with a polite email, and moves on with their day. Both face the same external, but the second person understands that their power isn't in controlling the mistake, but in controlling how much life force they dedicate to it. This is why slowing down matters. Reacting quickly often means reacting to the wrong thing. You're battling the symptom, the frustration, instead of addressing the cause, your attachment to a specific outcome. History's most resilient figures mastered this distinction. When Nelson Mandela was imprisoned for 27 years, he couldn't control his captors or his sentence. But he could control how he spent each day studying, exercising, even befriending guards to plant seeds of change. That's the power of focus. While others raged against the injustice, a valid but exhausting stance, Mandela conserved his energy for battles he could actually win. The same principle applies to your daily irritations. That colleague who interrupts you in meetings, you can't stop their rudeness, but you can choose whether to let it derail your focus or sharpen your communication. The modern twist is realizing that control isn't just about big moments, it's in the micro pauses, the breath you take before responding to a provocation, the 10 seconds you wait before hitting send on an email, even the decision to walk away from an unproductive argument. These tiny acts of restraint compound into something extraordinary, a life where you're no longer jerked around by externals but guided by intentional choice. So next time chaos comes, and it will, don't ask, how can I fix this immediately? Ask, where's the leverage? Because the secret isn't in reacting to the storm. It's in building an inner calm so steady that no storm can shake you. Seneca called anger a brief insanity, and he wasn't being poetic. In his famous essay on anger, he described it as a fire that starts with a spark, consumes reason, and leaves only ashes of regret. Picture someone cutting you off in traffic. That first flash of irritation, that's the spark. Leaning on your horn, tailgating, or shouting insults, that's the fire taking over. But here's Seneca's crucial insight. The moment between the spark and the flame is where your power lies. Anger isn't something that happens to you, it's something you allow. And the difference between a destructive outburst and disciplined restraint comes down to one thing: the pause. He used a chilling analogy. Anger is like collapsing a building. Once the first brick is pulled, the whole structure comes crashing down uncontrollably. Modern neuroscience backs this up. When we react in anger, the prefrontal cortex, the brain's rational control center, goes offline, while the amygdala, the primal threat detector, hijacks the system. In other words, unchecked anger literally makes us temporarily stupid. Seneca knew this 2,000 years before brain scans. His solution: interrupt the cascade. Just as you'd smother a small flame before it spreads, you can smother anger by refusing to feed it in those critical early seconds. This isn't about bottling up emotions. Seneca was adamant, pretending you're not upset only delays the explosion. True mastery means examining the anger before it examines you. Next time you feel that heat rising, try his 3-step autopsy. First, ask, is this worth my energy? Most provocations aren't. That driver didn't cut you off to insult you, they're just distracted. Second, assess, will reacting improve anything? Honking won't cut you off, it just raises your blood pressure. Third, reframe, what if this happened to someone else? We're often more forgiving of strangers than ourselves. That mental shift dissolves anger's false urgency. Modern life gives us endless Seneca tests. Road rage is just the start. Think about online arguments where typing in anger means publishing forever. Or workplace conflicts where a snapped reply can derail a career. Even parenting yelling might feel cathartic in the moment, but it rarely teaches lasting lessons. The Stoic alternative: channel Seneca's pre-rehearsal. Imagine your triggers beforehand, the messy kitchen, the slow coworker, the rude comment, and decide in advance how you'll respond. This isn't suppression, it's strategy. Like a chess player thinking 3 moves ahead, you're programming your future self to bypass rage entirely. The brilliance of Seneca's approach is its scalability. For minor irritations, the pause might be a breath. For major betrayals, it could be days or weeks. When a close friend betrays your trust, anger screams for immediate confrontation. But wisdom whispers, wait until you can speak from principle, not pain. That's the difference between revenge and resolution. History's greatest peacemakers, from Gandhi to Mandela, understood this. Their power wasn't in never feeling anger. It was in refusing to let anger dictate timing. So the next time life hands you that spark, whether it's a snippy email or a personal slight, remember Seneca's madness metaphor. That initial surge isn't strength, it's vulnerability in disguise, but the pause, that's where true control lies, not in denying the fire, but in choosing whether to fan it or let it die. And in that choice, you'll find something far more powerful than anger: sovereignty over your own mind. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, "You have 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them in that proportion." This wasn't just advice for polite conversation, it was a battle strategy. The Stoics understood something most of us forget. Silence isn't empty space waiting to be filled, it's fertile ground where real understanding grows. In a world that rewards quick comebacks and instant opinions, choosing to stay quiet can feel like surrendering. But what if the opposite is true? What if silence is the ultimate power move? Take business negotiations, an arena where every second of dead air feels like losing ground. Conventional wisdom says fill the void, keep talking, pitch harder, defend your position. But research from Harvard Business School reveals something startling. The negotiator who embraces strategic silence after making an offer consistently gets better terms. Why? Because nature abhors a vacuum. When you resist the urge to explain, justify, or backtrack, the other party rushes to fill the silence, often with concessions you'd never ask for outright. A salesperson might cave on price. A client might reveal their real budget. That's the Stoic edge, letting others expose their hand while you maintain the clarity to play yours. This mirrors exactly how Marcus Aurelius governed Rome. Faced with senators shouting demands or foreign emissaries testing his resolve, he'd often respond with deliberate quiet. Not indifference, calculated restraint. By refusing to be rushed into decisions, he forced others to reveal their true intentions. Modern psychology confirms this ancient tactic. When we pause before speaking, we activate the brain's inhibitory control systems, the same networks that prevent impulsive spending or unhealthy eating. Silence, it turns out, is the cognitive equivalent of letting wine breathe. It allows the sediment of emotion to settle so only the clearest thoughts remain. Here's how to apply this today. Next time you're in a high-stakes conversation asking for a raise, discussing contract terms, even resolving a personal conflict, try the Stoic Pause. After stating your position, physically stop. Count to 7 in your head. Research shows this is the tipping point where discomfort shifts leverage. Observe how the other person's body language changes. Notice if their eyes dart, their posture shifts, or most telling, if they start negotiating against themselves. This isn't manipulation, it's allowing space for truth to emerge. The magic lies in what happens inside you during that pause. Most rushed responses come from one of two fears. If I don't speak now, I'll look weak, or if I wait, I'll lose my chance. The Stoics reframed both. Your strength isn't measured by how fast you react, but by how unshakable you remain when others expect you to fold, and opportunities. They're not single doors slamming shut their tides. Miss one wave and another will come, often carrying better conditions because you waited. Consider how tech giant Apple operates. Their product launches famously omit features competitors rush to advertise. That silence isn't oversight, it's strategy. By not reacting to every market trend, they force observers to lean in closer, assigning more value to what they eventually reveal. Your daily interactions work the same way. The coworker who interrupts meetings less often becomes the one others quiet down to hear. The friend who listens more than they vent becomes the confidant everyone seeks. Even in parenting, reacting with measured silence to a child's tantrum often diffuses it faster than engaged arguing. The deeper lesson, what you withhold shapes what you receive. When you resist the itch to have the last word, you gain something far more valuable, the last thought. That's the Stoic secret. The person who controls the silence controls the conversation. Not through domination, but through the quiet confidence that some truths can only be heard when we stop shouting. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who trained Epictetus, had a radical view of pleasure and pain. He taught that endurance isn't just about weathering hardship, it's about rewiring your relationship with time itself. Picture two people at the gym. One chases the burn of every workout, pushing to exhaustion for instant satisfaction. The other focuses on form, progression, and recovery, sometimes leaving the gym feeling they could have done more. In the moment, the first person gets the dopamine hit. But a year later, who's stronger, who's injury-free? That's the Stoic secret. Delayed gratification isn't denial, it's strategic patience. Modern science calls this the marshmallow test principle, the ability to wait for a bigger reward. But the Stoics framed it deeper. Musonius argued that endurance trains the mind first, the body second. When you choose the slower path, whether in fitness, learning a skill, or building a career, you're not just waiting for future gain. You're practicing sovereignty over your impulses. Take coding as an example. The beginner who grinds through tedious syntax drills while friends chase flashy projects might feel behind until the day complex problems require fundamentals they've mastered. That's delayed gratification in armor, short-term restraint becoming long-term advantage. This flips society's script on willpower. We're told resisting temptation is about white-knuckling through cravings. But Musonius taught that true endurance comes from redefining what's tempting. To him, the athlete who skips dessert isn't depriving themselves, they're indulging in the deeper pleasure of future excellence. The writer who drafts 10 mediocre pages daily isn't delaying publication. They're savoring the certainty that consistent effort compounds. Even in relationships, the Stoic pause transforms conflicts. Reacting to a partner's harsh words with equal heat brings momentary catharsis. Waiting to respond until emotions cool, that builds trust that outlasts any argument. History's greats weaponized this principle. Beethoven didn't compose symphonies in frenzied inspiration. He wrote painstakingly, measure by measure, deftness closing in. J.K. Rowling plotted entire Harry Potter arcs while scraping by on welfare. Their genius wasn't in ignoring present struggles, but in seeing past them. Modern research echoes this. A study of chess masters found their advantage wasn't faster thinking, but longer pauses before critical moves. They endured the discomfort of uncertainty to uncover superior strategies. Here's how to make this practical. Next time you face a choice between instant and incremental rewards, apply Musonius' 3 filters. First, ask, what does the impulsive option cost me long term? That extra hour scrolling steals focus from deep work. Second, what does patience make possible? Skipping dessert today means fitting into your wedding suit next month. Third, and most Stoic, reframe the weight itself as the reward. The musician practicing scales isn't just preparing for a performance, they're cultivating the discipline that will elevate every note they ever play. Because ultimately, delayed gratification isn't about what you get later. It's about who you become in the process, the body built rep by rep, the career forged project by project. The peace earned pause by pause, and in a world obsessed with quick wins, that's the ultimate edge, the ability to move slowly when everyone else is rushing, and arrive farther because of it. Epictetus, the former slave who became one of history's most influential Stoic teachers, had a blunt warning for anyone easily provoked. If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. That might sound harsh at first, why blame the victim? But here's the radical truth Stoics uncovered centuries ago. Non-reaction isn't passivity, it's precision targeting. Every time you refuse to engage with a troll, dismiss a petty insult, or let an unfair accusation hang in the air unanswered, you're not losing a battle, you're choosing the battlefield. Think about the last time you saw a heated social media thread. Someone posts a controversial opinion, and like clockwork, the replies explode with outrage. But notice who actually wins in those exchanges. It's rarely the person firing off the cleverest comeback or the most righteous indignation. It's the one who never showed up to fight at all. The author who lets criticism sit unanswered. The celebrity who doesn't dignify rumors with a response. Their silence isn't weakness, it's a force field. By not reacting, they reveal something profound. The troll's power was never in the insult itself, but in the hope that you'd waste your energy wrestling with it. This is where Stoic philosophy becomes unexpectedly modern. Epictetus wrote, "No person is free who is not master of themselves." That mastery shines brightest when provocation meets emptiness. Imagine pouring water into a cup with no bottom. No matter how much you pour, the cup never fills. That's the Stoic mind trained in non-reaction. The insult comes in, but without the container of your attention, it evaporates. Social media platforms are designed to exploit this very vulnerability. Every notification, every reply button, every trending topic is engineered to hook your emotional response. But the person who scrolls past, they've hacked the system. Consider a real-world example. A journalist receives a barrage of hateful comments after publishing an unpopular opinion. The impulsive reaction might be to defend, explain, or counterattack, but the Stoic approach recognize that those words only have power if you lend them your time and energy. Every minute spent crafting the perfect clapback is a minute stolen from meaningful work, loved ones, or inner peace. This isn't about ignoring genuine harm, it's about discerning between battles that matter and distractions dressed as emergencies. The ancient Stoics trained for this through mental exercises. They'd imagine encountering rude people in the marketplace, rehearsing their calm instead of their comebacks. Modern life gives us ready-made practice arenas. That coworker who needles you in meetings, the relative who always brings up politics at dinner, these aren't nuisances, they're gym equipment for your restraint muscles. Each time you bite your tongue, you're not surrendering, you're strengthening the neural pathways that separate stimulus from response. What makes non-reaction so potent is its ripple effect. When you refuse to engage, you deprive the provocation of oxygen. Think of a fire alarm ringing in an empty building. Eventually, it stops on its own. The same principle applies to online arguments, office gossip, or family drama. No audience, no performance, and here's the unexpected bonus. People start to notice your unshakable composure. Over time, they'll either respect your boundaries or move on to easier targets. Either outcome is a win. Epictetus offered a simple test for when to respond. Will engaging improve the situation or my character? If the answer is no, then walking away isn't retreat. It's a tactical advance, because true strength isn't measured by how much chaos you can withstand, but by how much you refuse to let it dictate your next move. In a world addicted to reaction, your greatest power might just be your pause. Marcus Aurelius scribbled a note to himself in the margins of his wartime journal that would become meditations. The obstacle is the way. At first glance, it sounds like empty optimism, the kind of motivational poster platitude you'd see in a corporate office. But the emperor-philosopher wasn't peddling blind positivity. He was revealing a tactical truth. Every barrier life throws at you has a secret door, and patience is the key that unlocks it. Consider how vines grow. When they hit a wall, they don't retreat or rage against the obstruction. They pause, adjust their course, and use that very wall as support to climb higher than they could have on open ground. That's the Stoic view of obstacles, not as roadblocks, but as redirections. History's greatest innovators embody this principle. Take the story of a fledgling tech startup that launched a groundbreaking app only to watch it crash spectacularly on launch day due to server overload. The founders could have folded immediately, interpreting the failure as proof their idea was flawed. Instead, they did something counterintuitive. They waited. Not passively, but with deliberate analysis. While competitors rushed to patch superficial bugs, this team spent weeks interviewing every frustrated user, discovering that the crash had revealed an even bigger market need, one their original product didn't address. 2 years later, their pivot became a billion-dollar enterprise. What seemed like a catastrophe was actually market research they couldn't have bought at any price. This mirrors exactly how Marcus Aurelius reframed military defeats during Rome's brutal wars. In Meditations, he wrote, "The impediment to action advances action." What stands in the way becomes the way. When barbarian tribes disrupted supply lines, Roman engineers developed mobile food preservation techniques that later revolutionized trade. When harsh winters froze battle plans, soldiers trained in hand-to-hand combat indoors, emerging stronger for spring campaigns. The Stoic leader didn't just tolerate setbacks, he mined them for advantages no one else saw. Modern psychology confirms this ancient wisdom. Studies of elite athletes show that those who view injuries as opportunities to develop mental resilience or study game theory actually outperform their pre-injury selves. Why? Because forced pauses create space for strategic thinking that constant motion obscures. A musician with tendinitis learns composition while healing. A writer facing rejection uses the downtime to refine their voice. Even nature operates this way. Forest fires clear dead wood so sunlight can reach saplings waiting beneath the canopy. Here's how to apply this today. Next time you hit a wall, a rejected proposal, a missed promotion, a creative block, try Marcus' three-step reframe. First, ask, what does this obstacle prevent? Not superficially, but fundamentally. That failed product launch might stop immediate revenue but protect you from scaling a flawed model. Second, explore, what does it reveal? The server crash exposed untapped customer needs. The missed promotion highlights skills to develop. Third, invert. How could this barrier become my bridge? That's where patience transforms from waiting into strategic observation, because the deepest truth about obstacles isn't that they slow us down. It's that they force us to grow in directions we wouldn't have chosen voluntarily. The startup that fails fast learns faster. The writer whose draft gets shredded discovers tighter prose. Even personal losses contain this alchemy. The end of a relationship that felt like devastation at the time often creates space for connections that align with who you're becoming. Marcus Aurelius knew this better than anyone. Governing an empire plagued by plague, war, and betrayal, he wrote, "Our actions may be impeded, but there can be no impeding our intentions or dispositions." In other words, they can block your path, but they can't stop you from choosing to see the detour as the better route. That's the ultimate Stoic shift, not just enduring obstacles, but recognizing that the pause they impose is where the real work happens. Not in spite of the wall, but because of it. Seneca's exile should have broken him. Banished to Corsica for 8 years on false charges of adultery, stripped of wealth and status, forced to live in what Romans considered a barbaric backwater, this was more than inconvenience. It was social death, yet in his letters from exile we find not bitterness but something startling, gratitude. "This solitude," he wrote, "has given me the chance to examine my own life." Where others saw punishment, Seneca saw preparation. Where most would rage against the delay, he treated it as the universe's strictest teacher. That's Stoic resilience in its purest form, not just enduring waiting, but excavating its hidden curriculum. What made this possible? A radical reframe. The Stoics viewed delays not as interruptions to life, but as life itself. Think of a musician practicing scales. To an outsider, it's repetitive, even tedious, but the musician knows this isn't time wasted before the performance, it's what makes the performance possible. Seneca approached exile the same way. Those 8 years became his scales daily exercises in self-study, writing, and philosophy that honed the wisdom he'd later used to counsel Emperor Nero. His most profound works, from On the Shortness of Life to Letters from a Stoic, were forged in that crucible of waiting. Modern psychology confirms this ancient insight. Studies on post-traumatic growth show that people who actively engage with adversity, asking, "What can this teach me?" rather than, "Why is this happening to me?" emerge with greater emotional resilience. It's the difference between seeing a traffic jam as stolen time versus an unexpected chance to listen to an audiobook. Between viewing a job search as purgatory or as daily practice in articulating your value, the delay itself doesn't change, your relationship to it does. Here's how to apply Seneca's lens to your own life. First, identify a current delay, maybe a postponed promotion, a stalled creative project, or a relationship in limbo. Now, imagine future you looking back on this period. What skills could you develop now that will make that version of you grateful for the wait? A writer whose manuscript keeps getting rejected might use the time to study storytelling structure more deeply. An athlete recovering from injury could develop mental visualization techniques. Even bureaucratic hold-ups waiting for visas, approvals, or paperwork become opportunities to cultivate patience as a discipline rather than endure it as a burden. The most transformative delays often come disguised as dead ends. J.K. Rowling's early rejections forced her to refine Harry Potter's world building. Steve Jobs' exile from Apple led to the creative detour that birthed Pixar. And Seneca, without exile, Rome might have gained another competent politician, but lost one of history's greatest philosophers. That's the paradox Stoicism reveals. The periods that feel like life pressing pause are often where your character fast forwards. So the next time you're stuck waiting, whether in a doctor's office or for life-altering news, ask Seneca's question: what if this isn't holding me back but preparing me? Because resilience isn't just about weathering storms, it's about learning to read the clouds in ways no one else can see. The ping of a new email arrives and your hand twitches toward the mouse. A text buzzes and your eyes flick to the screen before the vibration fades. We live submerged in what psychologists call urgency culture, the unshakable sense that every notification demands immediate attention. Every message requires instant reply. But here's what Marcus Aurelius would tell you if he saw your inbox. You always own the option of not having an opinion. You always own the option of not reacting. That flashing red notification isn't controlling you. You're surrendering to the illusion that speed equals significance. Consider how email reshaped workplace expectations. In the 1980s, professionals expected days or weeks for responses. Today, a 4-hour delay can trigger follow-up messages. Yet studies from the University of California reveal something counterintuitive. The most productive people aren't those who reply fastest, they're those who batch communications, often responding within 24 hours with far more thoughtful solutions. The Stoics would nod knowingly at this. Their concept of premeditatio malorum, premeditating challenges, included anticipating false urgencies. When Marcus wrote, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind," he wasn't just advising deep thought. He was warning against letting trivial demands colonize your attention. This illusion thrives on a biological trick. Every time you react quickly to a message, your brain gets a micro hit of dopamine, the same reward chemical triggered by slot machines. Tech companies engineer this deliberately, but the Stoics discovered the antidote centuries ago: intentional delay. Next time your phone lights up, try this experiment. Instead of reaching for it, watch the impulse like an anthropologist observing a curious ritual. Notice how the urgency fades within seconds when left unattended. That space between trigger and action is where you reclaim sovereignty over your time. History's greatest minds weaponized this principle. Victor Hugo wrote The Hunchback of Notre Dame by locking his clothes away to avoid social distractions. Modern innovators like Bill Gates take annual think weeks in secluded cabins, deliberately disconnecting to reconnect with depth. These aren't extremes, they're applications of Stoic apatheia, not apathy, but emotional clarity. As Seneca advised his friend Lucilius, set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest food, saying to yourself the while, "Is this the condition I feared?" For us, that might mean turning off notifications for an afternoon, or letting non-urgent emails age like wine before replying. The magic lies in recognizing that most deadlines are manufactured. That ASAP request from a colleague, rarely as urgent as it sounds, the limited time offer in your cart. A psychological nudge, not a genuine opportunity. Marcus Aurelius confronted real urgency barbarians at Rome's gates, plagues decimating cities, yet still wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself but to your own estimate of it." Translate that to modern life. The ding of your phone holds only the power you assign it. Practical application starts small. Begin with email triage. Unless lives or livelihoods hang in the balance, let messages sit for at least 30 minutes before responding. Use that window to ask, what would happen if I waited an hour, a day? you'll discover most crises evaporate without your intervention. For texts, try the 3-breath rule. Inhale deeply 3 times before replying to anything emotionally charged. This isn't procrastination, it's precision. Like a chef refusing to rush a sauce, you're honoring the process required for quality results. The deeper truth. Urgency is a costume worn by trivial things to gain importance. When you stop dressing every demand in emergency attire, you start seeing clearly that backlog of unread messages. Most will resolve themselves if given air. The meeting that couldn't wait could have been an email. Even in personal relationships, the friend demanding immediate advice often benefits more from your considered thoughts than your fastest ones. As the Stoics taught through every parable and practice, speed belongs to the body. Wisdom belongs to those who pause. Epictetus put it bluntly, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Think about that for a moment. 2 people sit in the same traffic jam. One white knuckles the steering wheel, cursing every red light, feeding their frustration until it becomes rage. The other turns up a podcast, uses the time to call an old friend, or simply watches the clouds drift by. The external event, the traffic, is identical. But the internal experience, worlds apart. That's the Stoic secret. Circumstances don't define our reality, our judgments do. This philosophy flips victimhood on its head. When we blame traffic for our anger or a rude comment for our hurt, we hand over our agency. Epictetus, who endured slavery before becoming a revered teacher, knew this intimately. He wrote, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." That traffic jam doesn't create suffering, your belief that the road should be clear does. The co-worker's criticism doesn't wound you, your conviction that their opinion must matter does. Every time you attach should or must to an external event, you build a prison of expectations. And the Stoic key, swap "this shouldn't be happening" with "this is what's happening, how will I meet it?" Consider air travel delays. We've all seen the passenger erupting at the gate agent over a cancelled flight. Their outburst won't summon a new plane, but it will drain their energy and isolate them from potential solutions. Contrast that with the traveler who accepts the delay as fact, then adapts, rebooking calmly, discovering the quiet airport bar as an unexpected workspace, or striking up a conversation with a fellow stranded passenger that leads to a future business connection. Both face the same external event, only one chooses to transform it. The deeper lesson here isn't about traffic or flight, it's about the stories we wrap around events. When Epictetus said, "Don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do," he wasn't preaching passivity. He was offering a mental toolkit for resilience. That honking car behind you, it's just sound waves until you decide it's a personal affront. The rain on your wedding day, it's just weather until you script it as a cosmic injustice. The more we practice stripping events of the meanings we assign them, the more freedom we gain to respond rather than react. Modern neuroscience backs this ancient wisdom. Studies show that when we label emotions, "I'm noticing frustration," we activate the prefrontal cortex, dampening the amygdala's panic signals. Essentially, we're doing what Epictetus advised, observing our judgments rather than being enslaved by them. Try this next time you're stuck in literal or metaphorical traffic. First, name the external event factually. There's a 10-car backup ahead. Then notice your automatic judgment. This is ruining my day. Finally, experiment with reframing. This is giving me time to. The event hasn't changed, your relationship to it has. What makes this approach so powerful is its universality. The same principle that helps you shrug off a rainy picnic also helps survivors of profound loss rebuild their lives. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who endured Nazi concentration camps, wrote in Man's Search for Meaning, between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. That space is where Epictetus lived. Whether facing slavery or a spilled drink, his question remained, will I let this control me, or will I control my interpretation of it? So the next time life throws an obstacle in your path, whether it's a flat tire or a failed project, remember the Stoic lens. The obstacle itself is indifferent. It's your gaze that gives it power, and in that realization lies an incredible freedom. You don't have to change the world to change your experience of it. You just have to change your mind. Seneca's essay on the shortness of life opens with a startling accusation. Life is long enough, and it's been given in sufficiently generous measure, if only we knew how to use it. At first glance, that feels laughable in our era of packed calendars and sleep-deprived hustle. But Seneca wasn't talking about clock hours. He was exposing a paradox. The busiest people often feel the most starved for time, while those who master patience discover time expands. Imagine two colleagues at the same company. One multitasks through meetings, eats lunch at their desk, and stays late chasing productivity. The other blocks deep work hours, takes mindful walks, and leaves at 5 sharp. Counterintuitively, it's the second person who often delivers higher quality work because they understand that rushing doesn't save time. It fractures attention into useless fragments. This isn't just philosophical musing, it's neuroscience. Studies at Stanford revealed that chronic multitaskers perform worse on cognitive tests than their focused counterparts. Their brains, accustomed to constant switching, lose the ability to concentrate even when they want to. Seneca saw this 2 millennia earlier. Being everywhere means being nowhere. He watched Roman elites cram their days with social obligations and business deals, only to complain about life's brevity on their deathbeds. His remedy: stop confusing motion with progress. A gardener doesn't tug at seedlings to make them grow faster. They trust the process. Likewise, the most meaningful endeavors, mastering a skill, building a relationship, creating art, can't be rushed without sacrificing depth. Consider parenting as the ultimate test of this principle. The parent who schedules every minute of their child's day, soccer practice, tutoring, music lessons, might believe they're optimizing time. But the moments that truly shape a child's life often happen in the unplanned spaces. Bedtime stories that run long, spontaneous kitchen table conversations, even shared silence during a car ride. Seneca would call these the rich hours, periods where time feels expansive precisely because we're not counting it. Modern life's tragedy isn't that we have too little time. It's that we've been trained to see waiting as waste instead of investment. The Stoic alternative: treat time like a currency you can't earn back, but can spend wisely. A CEO might spend 8 hours in back-to-back meetings feeling productive, while a writer who spends 3 hours crafting one perfect paragraph feels guilty for doing nothing. Yet history remembers the ideas, not the meetings. Michelangelo didn't rush the Sistine Chapel. Marie Curie didn't hurry radioactivity's discovery. Their patience wasn't passivity. It was the quiet intensity of knowing that some things cannot be forced. Practical application starts with auditing your relationship with time. Next time you feel the itch to hurry, ask Seneca's twin questions. What am I really gaining by rushing? And what am I losing by not slowing down? That work email fired off in irritation might save 5 minutes now, but cost you a client relationship later. The extra 10 minutes taken to listen to a struggling friend might feel like a delay in the moment, but become a memory that outlasts years. Even small pauses, savoring coffee instead of gulping it, walking rather than driving short distances, reclaim time's texture. Because here's the secret Seneca uncovered: life doesn't feel short when we're fully present in it. It feels short when we're mentally already elsewhere, obsessing over the next task, the next milestone, the next distraction. The parent playing with their phone while their child builds a block tower isn't saving time. They're missing the very moments that make parenting meaningful. The Stoic art of patience isn't about moving slower. It's about being more alive in each motion. As Seneca wrote, it's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. The minutes we think we're saving by rushing are often the ones we're losing forever. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who placed relationships at the heart of philosophy, offered a radical idea. Harmony isn't the absence of conflict, it's the mastery of timing. Picture a couple mid-argument. One partner's voice rises, the other's jaw tightens, and the conversation teeters on the edge of becoming something neither truly wants. This is where the Stoic pause transforms from theory to lifeline. It's not about who speaks first or loudest, but who has the discipline to create space between feeling and action. Because in relationships, the most damaging words aren't the ones we mean, they're the ones we say too quickly. Take a scenario so common it's almost cliché. A husband forgets an anniversary. The wife's first impulse might be to lash out, "You never prioritize us." The husband's defense, "I've been swamped at work." Within seconds, what began as hurt feelings escalates into a battle over who's more neglected. But imagine if either had applied Musonius' principle of intentional delay. That initial sting of disappointment, natural, the choice to voice it in that exact moment. Optional, Stoicism teaches us that emotions are signals, not commands. The wife who takes 10 minutes to walk around the block isn't suppressing her feelings, she's allowing them to settle from a storm into something she can articulate without shrapnel. The husband who breathes before defending isn't avoiding responsibility. He's creating room to hear the pain beneath the accusation. This mirrors exactly what modern relationship researchers call the magic 5 minutes. Studies show that couples who introduce brief pauses during heated conflicts resolve disputes 40% faster and with far less residual damage. Why? Because physiological arousal, the racing heart, flushed face, and tunnel vision of anger, takes exactly 90 seconds to subside if not fueled. The Stoics discovered this through observation centuries ago. Musonius taught that patience in relationships isn't passive. It's the art of letting biology run its course so wisdom can speak. Practical application starts with recognizing your body's warning signs, the clenched stomach before snapping, the heat behind your eyes before interrupting. These are your cues to enact the Stoic pause. One partner might say, "I need 20 minutes to process this before we continue." The other might write their initial reaction in a notes app instead of voicing it. What seems like avoidance in the moment often becomes the bridge to real understanding. Consider the anniversary argument again. After that walk, the wife might realize her outburst wasn't really about the forgotten date, but a deeper fear of growing distant. The husband, given space to reflect, might acknowledge how work has indeed consumed him. The conflict that could have burned for days now becomes a catalyst for connection. History's greatest love stories echo this principle. Abigail and John Adams, whose letters preserved one of history's most enduring marriages, often wrote impassioned responses, then set them aside for days before sending. The gaps between their words became fertile ground for perspective. Modern couples can replicate this digitally by drafting angry texts, then sleeping on them. The message you don't send tonight often becomes the conversation you're grateful you had tomorrow. The deeper truth Musonius uncovered: every relationship is a dance of triggers and tolerances. Your partner's messy habits or distracted listening aren't offenses, they're invitations to choose your response. And in that choice lies either a spiral or a solution. Because the Stoic pause in love isn't about winning arguments, it's about winning back the clarity to remember why you're arguing in the first place. Not to hurt, but to heal. Not to separate, but to sync back up. And that's a victory no heated moment can outweigh. Marcus Aurelius faced more leadership challenges before breakfast than most CEOs encounter in a year. Plagues decimated his cities, barbarian armies pressed Rome's borders, senators plotted against him, yet his journals reveal no frantic reactions, only methodical reflections on justice and resilience. This wasn't indifference, it was the ultimate display of Stoic leadership. He understood what modern neuroscience confirms: the brain's prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational decision-making, functions like a muscle. When leaders react impulsively to every crisis, they exhaust the very faculty needed for strategic thinking. Aurelius preserved his by treating urgency as an illusion. His famous nightly practice reviewing the day's events without judgment wasn't just self-improvement. It was cognitive maintenance for ruling an empire. Consider a modern parallel. When Satya Nadella took over Microsoft in 2014, the company was floundering. Wall Street demanded immediate restructuring. Instead, Nadella spent months listening to engineers, customers, even competitors. Critics called it hesitation, but like Aurelius surveying battlefields, he was mapping terrain invisible to others. Those patient months revealed Microsoft's real weakness wasn't products, it was culture. His delayed response, prioritizing collaboration over internal rivalries, became the foundation for trillion-dollar growth. The Stoic leader's edge lies in distinguishing between speed and haste. A general must act swiftly once the battle begins, but the best commanders from ancient Rome to modern boardrooms, no preparation can't be rushed. When Howard Schultz returned to Starbucks in 2008, he didn't immediately shutter underperforming stores. He barista-trained for weeks, absorbing frontline realities before making billion-dollar decisions. This mirrored Aurelius' habit of consulting advisors from all social strata, not to delay action, but to ensure his actions landed with precision. What makes patience so transformative in leadership? It filters noise from signal. A study of Fortune 500 CEOs found that those who scheduled blank space in their calendars, periods with no meetings or emails, outperformed peers by 32% on long-term metrics. Like Aurelius writing in his tent at dawn, they created buffers where pressure could dissipate and insight could crystallize. The leader who pauses before pivoting isn't missing opportunities, they're avoiding the costly rebounds of knee-jerk decisions. Practical application starts with restructuring how you perceive emergencies. Next time a team member bursts in with "this can't wait," channel Aurelius' 4-question filter. 1. Is this truly irreversible if delayed 24 hours? 2. What would change if I slept on it? 3. Who else's perspective have I not considered? 4. Does reacting now serve my mission or just my pride? Most crises dissolve under this scrutiny. The ultimate test comes when stakes are highest. During the 2010 Deepwater Horizon oil spill, BP CEO became a case study in reactionary leadership, apologizing prematurely, making promises he couldn't keep. Contrast this with Merck CEO Kenneth Frazier in 2017. Facing a failed drug trial that erased $6 billion in market value overnight, he gathered scientists for 3 days of deliberation, not denial, before addressing shareholders. His measured response preserved trust during catastrophe. This is the paradox Stoic leaders grasp. Authority isn't demonstrated by how quickly you act, but by how much chaos you can withstand without being rushed. Whether commanding legions or quarterly earnings, the principle holds: the leader who controls time controls outcomes, not through domination, but through the quiet confidence that some storms pass faster when you don't chase them. Seneca once warned that perpetual haste is its own kind of bondage, a truth our modern world has forgotten in its worship of speed. We race through emails, cram calendars back to back, and pride ourselves on multitasking, believing productivity lies in velocity. Yet the data tells a different story. A Stanford study found that workers who juggle multiple tasks simultaneously perform worse on cognitive tests than those who focus deeply. Their brains, accustomed to constant switching, lose the ability to concentrate even when they want to. This is the paradox of speed. What feels like efficiency often erodes the very capacity for meaningful work. Consider the tech industry, where burnout has become epidemic. Developers push code at midnight, executives answer Slack messages during family dinners, and entire companies operate in perpetual crunch mode, all chasing the illusion that faster output guarantees success. But look closer. The most groundbreaking innovations rarely emerge from frenzied sprints. Tim Berners-Lee developed the World Wide Web during a period of deliberate experimentation at CERN, not a death march of deadlines. The founders of Google famously implemented 20% time, 1 day a week for unstructured exploration, which birthed Gmail and AdSense. These breakthroughs didn't come from moving faster, but from creating space to think differently. Seneca saw this 2,000 years ago when he wrote, "Life is long if you know how to use it." He wasn't suggesting we live forever, but that rushing through experiences, skimming books, half listening in conversations, ticking tasks mindlessly, leaves us with the peculiar sensation of having lived a busy life without ever truly being present. The programmer who codes for 12 hours straight but can't recall what they built is just as enslaved as the ancient Roman who wasted days flattering patrons for favors. Both traded depth for the illusion of motion. The antidote lies in redefining what fast means. A master woodworker isn't slow, they move with precise efficiency, knowing that a single careful cut saves 10 corrections later. Similarly, the executive who blocks 4 uninterrupted morning hours for strategic work accomplishes more than the one constantly reacting to emails. This is what Seneca meant when he said haste enslaves us. Speed that sacrifices discernment isn't velocity, it's chaos in disguise. Practical application starts with auditing your relationship with time. Next time you feel compelled to rush, ask, is this truly urgent or just artificially prioritized? The email marked ASAP often waits days in the sender's outbox before being written. That emergency meeting could usually be resolved with a 5-minute call. Even in creative work, the myth of the last-minute inspiration persists. Yet studies of writers and artists show their best work emerges from consistent, deliberate practice, not frenetic bursts. The Stoic alternative: treat time as a currency spent only on what deserves it. Just as you wouldn't frivolously withdraw savings, don't squander attention on false urgencies. The tech leader who implements no meeting Wednesdays isn't losing a day, they're buying back the space needed for breakthroughs. The parent who leaves their phone in another room during playtime isn't falling behind, they're investing in memories that outlast any notification. Because here's the secret Seneca uncovered: true speed isn't measured in tasks completed per hour, but in moments fully inhabited. The woodworker's perfect joint, the coder's elegant algorithm, the parent's undistracted laugh with their child, these aren't slow. They're the essence of efficiency, where time bends to intention rather than shattering into fragments. And in that recalibration lies freedom, not from work, but from the tyranny of hurry. Marcus Aurelius never intended for his private journals to become one of history's most influential books. Meditations was simply his nightly ritual, a conversation with himself to process the chaos of ruling an empire. And that's precisely what makes it so powerful. The emperor wasn't writing for an audience, he was practicing patience through reflection. Each entry was a pause button, a way to step outside the whirlwind of daily pressures and ask, what truly deserved my reaction today? That's the hidden purpose of Stoic journaling. It's not just recording events, but creating space between experience and response. Think of your mind like a snow globe. When shaken by frustration or urgency, everything becomes a blur, but given stillness, the flakes settle until you can see clearly again. Journaling is that stillness, the simple act of writing, "What did I gain by waiting today?" forces you to sift through the noise for golden moments of restraint, the email you didn't send in anger, the impulse purchase you walked away from, even the extra breath you took before answering a loaded question. These aren't small victories, they're the incremental strengthening of your patience muscle. Modern research echoes this ancient practice. Studies on expressive writing show that just 15 minutes of journaling reduces cortisol levels and improves emotional regulation. But the Stoic approach adds a crucial twist. It's not just venting emotions onto paper, it's interrogating them. When Marcus wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events," he was reminding himself that every reaction is a choice. Your journal becomes the courtroom where those choices are examined. Did snapping at your coworker solve anything, or did waiting to discuss the issue calmly yield better results? Did refreshing your inbox every 10 minutes bring clarity, or did stepping away for an hour reveal the reply wasn't even urgent? Practical application starts with structure. Keep your journal by your bedside or as a note on your phone, somewhere accessible when reflection feels most natural. Begin with Marcus' template. Today's challenge was followed by how I could have reacted and how I chose to respond. This isn't about self-judgment, it's pattern recognition. Over time, you'll spot triggers, certain people, situations, or times of day when patience wears thin. One CEO client discovered through journaling that her worst impulsive decisions happened mid-afternoon when blood sugar dropped. Simple snacks became her secret weapon against hasty choices. The magic lies in the questions you ask. What did waiting make possible today? Might reveal that the project delay allowed for a key insight. Where did rushing cost me? Could expose how multitasking led to errors requiring hours to fix. Even seemingly negative entries have value. Documenting a moment you lost patience teaches more than a dozen victories. Like a chess player reviewing past games, you're not critiquing yourself, you're upgrading your strategy for next time. This practice scales beautifully. A teacher might journal about waiting out a student's emotional outburst instead of reacting, only to have the child later confide the real issue. A nurse could note how pausing to double-check a dosage prevented a medication error. Even in creative work, journaling about stalled projects often reveals how the forced wait allowed ideas to mature beyond first drafts. The common thread. What initially felt like delay was actually the universe's editing process, cutting rushed impulses to make room for wiser actions. Marcus' journals survived because they're shockingly relatable. His struggles with difficult people, self-doubt, and the tension between urgency and wisdom mirror ours. The difference, he had a system to process them. Your journal is that system, a place where patience stops being something you should practice and becomes something you do practice, one honest reflection at a time. Because the most transformative pauses often happen not in the moment, but afterward, when you sit with the question, what if waiting wasn't holding me back but preparing me? Epictetus once compared life to a wrestling match, where the wise athlete doesn't complain about the opponent's strength, they train for it. That's the hidden connection between waiting and preparedness. True patience isn't passive waiting, it's active conditioning. Think of a marathon runner in the final weeks before a race. They're not idly counting down days, they're methodically tapering workouts, refining nutrition, visualizing the course. The race itself is just the reveal. The real work happened in the disciplined pauses between training sessions. Stoicism teaches the same principle. The challenges life throws at us aren't surprises, they're tests we've been preparing for. In every moment we chose patience over impulsivity. Consider how Olympic divers train. They don't just jump off platforms thousands of times. They stand at the edge for long moments, mentally rehearsing each twist and entry. That stillness isn't hesitation, it's the accumulation of countless hours spent falling gracefully in their minds before their bodies follow. Epictetus framed this as premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of hardships. Difficulties show men what they are, he wrote. In crossing the threshold, you enter the proving ground. When you wait patiently through frustration, you're not killing time. You're building the neural pathways that'll hold steady when real crisis hits. Modern neuroscience validates this ancient insight. Studies on expert performers, from surgeons to violinists, reveal that their superiority lies not in faster reflexes, but in delayed responses. MRI scans show their brains lighting up differently. Where novices react immediately, often clumsily, experts pause milliseconds longer, just enough to access trained patterns. That micro-delay is the difference between a scalpel slip and a perfect incision, between a sour note and a flawless performance. Stoic patience works the same way. When you practice pausing before reacting to minor irritations, a rude comment, a delayed flight, you're not just enduring inconvenience, you're engraving the circuitry that'll automatically activate when facing betrayal, loss, or failure. The military understands this deeply. Navy SEAL undergo hellish training not to simulate war's chaos, but to make disciplined restraint reflexive. During underwater drills, instructors will yank recruits' oxygen tubes to simulate equipment failure. The instinct is to panic, to bolt for the surface, but those who have trained their pause response stay calm, troubleshoot, and survive. Epictetus would nod in recognition. It's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters. That tube yank could be a traffic jam, a layoff notice, or a medical scare the principle holds. The space between event and action is where training shows up. Apply this by reframing daily waits as training reps. Stuck in line at the DMV, that's focused practice for high-stakes negotiations, holding your tongue during a pointless argument. That's emotional regulation for future grief. Even small children demonstrate this when they count to 10 before retaliating against a sibling. They're not just avoiding punishment, they're laying neural tracks for adult conflict resolution. The Stoic twist: life will test you whether you've trained or not. But when you've conditioned patience like an athlete conditions muscles, what overwhelms others becomes your moment to shine. The ultimate proof lies in how experts describe their craft. Ask a firefighter about their most harrowing rescue, and they'll tell you time didn't speed up, it slowed down. The same phenomenon appears in Stoic texts. Seneca wrote of feeling expansive time during exile. Marcus Aurelius described battles unfolding with eerie clarity. This isn't mystical, it's the brain accessing trained patience under pressure. Like a dancer who's rehearsed until the routine feels second nature, the practiced Stoic meets chaos with composed awareness. Because the secret isn't avoiding the storm, it's having weathered enough small squalls to recognize the tempest as just another conditions check. So the next time you're tempted to resent a delay, whether it's a traffic jam or a dream deferred, remember Epictetus' athlete. They don't curse the interval between races, they use it to hone what really matters. Your waiting periods aren't empty spaces before life begins again. They're the proving grounds where future victories are quietly built. Seneca once observed that a mind divided is a mind weakened. a truth our modern obsession with multitasking has nearly erased. Picture this: you're drafting an email while half listening to a conference call, intermittently checking notifications, and mentally compiling a grocery list. You feel productive, buzzing with activity, but here's the uncomfortable reality neuroscience has confirmed. Your brain isn't juggling these tasks, it's frantically switching between them, like a spotlight operator spinning wildly between stages. Each switch comes at a cost researchers call attention residue, where fragments of the previous task cling to your focus, degrading performance on the next. Seneca saw this 2,000 years before brain scans when he wrote, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere," the Stoic alternative, single tasking, not as a productivity hack but as a philosophical stance. Consider how Michelangelo approached the Sistine Chapel. He didn't fresco while dictating letters or debating theology. For 4 years, his world narrowed to the curve of a brush and the chemistry of pigments. That intensity of focus wasn't just practical, it was sacred. Modern workplaces have inverted this principle, celebrating the manager who simultaneously leads a Zoom meeting, edits a spreadsheet, and slacks with IT as if fragmentation were a virtue. But depth has always outlasted breadth. A programmer writing code without distractions for 3 hours produces fewer lines than one multitasking, but their work requires 80% fewer debugging hours later. This isn't just about efficiency, it's about integrity of attention. Seneca described time as the only commodity that, once spent, can never be replenished. When we scatter our focus, we're not saving time, we're fracturing it into useless shards. Imagine 2 chefs preparing the same dish. One chops vegetables while monitoring a simmering pot, texting their partner, and listening to a podcast. The other works with rhythmic precision, knife meeting board, aromas guiding adjustments, senses fully engaged. Both might finish simultaneously, but the second meal will carry something intangible, the quality of presence. That's the Stoic edge, the understanding that divided effort creates shallow results, while concentrated effort imprints excellence. Practical application starts with redefining what productivity means. Next time you sit down to work, try Seneca's hourglass method. Choose one priority, not a category like answer emails, but a specific outcome. Compose a clear response to the client's pricing concern. Set a physical hourglass or phone timer for 45 minutes. During that span, everything else ceases to exist. If other thoughts intrude, a sudden urge to check news, a reminder to call the bank, jot them on a notepad to address later. This isn't just time management, it's cognitive discipline. You're training what psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi called flow, that state where challenge and skill align so perfectly that time distorts. The myth of multitasking persists because it flatters our sense of capability. But the Stoics measured capability differently, not by how much we could withstand, but by how deeply we could engage. A musician doesn't practice scales while watching TV. Their fingers need to memorize pressure and resistance. A surgeon doesn't toggle between procedures. Lives depend on singular focus. Even in mundane tasks, the principle holds. The parent fully present during a child's recital, not filming, not mentally scheduling tomorrow's meetings, experiences something the multitasker misses entirely, the unbroken thread of meaning that weaves through moments given our whole attention. So the next time you feel pressured to do more at once, remember Seneca's lantern. The ancient philosopher would write by a single flame, its light circumscribed but intense. In that pool of illumination, ideas crystallize that would outlast empires. Your focus, too, is finite, but precisely because it's bounded, it becomes powerful. Not in spite of its limits, but because of them. Marcus Aurelius scribbled a command to himself in his private journals that cuts through 20 centuries of noise. Let every action aim solely at the common good. At first glance, it sounds noble but impractical until you realize he wasn't preaching idealism. He was issuing a tactical order. The difference between impulsive and intentional action isn't just philosophical, it's neurological. When researchers at Columbia University tracked decision-making, they found snap judgments activate the amygdala, the brain's threat detector, while deliberate actions light up the prefrontal cortex, home to reasoning and foresight. The Stoics didn't have fMRI machines, but they grasped this truth intuitively. Speed murders quality, while patience architects mastery. Consider two chefs preparing the same dish. One races through ingredients, eyeballing measurements, multitasking between stove and phone. The other measures precisely, tastes deliberately, adjusts methodically. The first might finish sooner, but the second creates something transcendent. This mirrors the Stoic view of daily life, not as a series of reactions, but as a craft to be honed. Epictetus, the former slave turned philosopher, put it bluntly: if you want to improve, be content to appear clueless or stupid in extraneous matters. That's the paradox. The person slowing down to act deliberately often outpaces the hasty in the long run. Modern life bombards us with chances to practice this. Take something as mundane as eating lunch. The impulsive approach, scarfing a sandwich while scrolling emails, barely registering taste, the Stoic alternative. Treating the meal as a meditation, noticing textures, savoring flavors, chewing thoroughly. This isn't just about digestion, it's training wheels for intentionality. Every mindful bite strengthens the neural pathways that'll help you pause before sending that angry email or making an impulsive purchase. The Roman statesman Cato the Younger took this further, deliberately wearing outdated clothing to practice indifference to others' opinions. His goal wasn't fashion martyrdom, it was conditioning himself to act from principle, not peer pressure. The magic lies in the micro moments. A CEO deciding to wait 24 hours before greenlighting projects avoids costly pivots. A parent counting to 10 before answering a child's endless "why?" questions models emotional regulation. Even social media becomes a training ground. The extra 3 seconds before commenting often reveal whether your words add value or just noise. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Our actions may be impeded, but there can be no impeding our intentions or dispositions." That's the core. Deliberate action isn't about controlling external outcomes, but mastering internal processes. Practical application starts small. Choose one routine act: brushing teeth, drinking coffee, greeting a colleague, and perform it with full attention for a week. Notice how the ritual transforms. The toothbrush becomes a tool for mindfulness, not just hygiene. The coffee break turns into a sensory exploration rather than a caffeine delivery system. These seemingly minor acts are stealth exercises in Stoic agency. Like a musician practicing scales to eventually play concertos, you're conditioning your mind to engage deliberately with larger challenges. History's greatest innovators weaponized this principle. Michelangelo didn't rush the Sistine Chapel's ceiling. He lay on scaffolding for years, perfecting each figure's musculature. Marie Curie didn't hurry radioactivity's discovery. She methodically processed tons of pitchblende ore. Their genius wasn't in moving faster, but in resisting the culture's tempo to honor their own. That's the ultimate Stoic rebellion in our frenetic age, the courage to act not when the world demands, but when wisdom dictates, because intentionality isn't just how you do things, it's how you become someone worthy of the things you do. Fear whispers that speed is safety, that if we move fast enough, we'll outrun discomfort, judgment, or failure. But Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who transformed his enslavement into a masterclass on inner freedom, saw through this illusion. Man is disturbed not by things, but by the views he takes of them. That rapid heartbeat before a difficult conversation, the clammy palms when called on in a meeting, these aren't signals to flee, but invitations to question what we're truly afraid of. Public speaking lays this bare. The novice speaker rushes through their presentation, words tumbling over each other, not because time is short, but because fear has convinced them that finishing quickly will end the agony. Yet the seasoned speaker knows the opposite is true. It's the deliberate pause after a key point, the breath taken before answering a tough question, that projects confidence and earns respect. Consider the biology of stage fright. When adrenaline floods your system, your brain screams "move now," a vestige of when quick reactions meant escaping predators. But modern threats like public speaking or difficult conversations aren't solved by speed, they're solved by presence. Epictetus trained his students to dissect fear like surgeons. What exactly am I afraid will happen? If I stumble over my words, will the audience revolt? Or is it my own judgment of stumbling that terrifies me? This mental autopsy reveals fear's dirty secret. It's not the event we dread, but our imagined catastrophe about it. The speaker who fears silence isn't avoiding dead air. They're avoiding the story they've attached to it, that silence equals incompetence. Practical tools emerge from this reframing. Before any high-stakes moment, apply Epictetus' three-part interrogation. First, name the fear concretely. I'm afraid my voice will shake. Second, challenge its power. If my voice shakes, does that actually prevent the audience from understanding me? History's most impactful speeches, from Lincoln's Gettysburg Address to Churchill's wartime broadcasts, weren't delivered flawlessly, but meaningfully. Third, invert the narrative. Could my vulnerability humanize me? Brené Brown's research on shame resilience confirms what Stoics intuited: audiences connect with speakers who own their humanity, not perform perfection. The transformation happens in the gap between impulse and action. When your pulse races, that's biology. When you interpret that racing pulse as a sign you're failing, that's judgment. And when you pause to separate the two, that's philosophy in motion. Legendary orators from Cicero to opera harness this. Cicero prepared for speeches by rehearsing in stormy seas, conditioning himself to stay composed amid turbulence. Modern executives use similar tactics, recording practice pitches to normalize the sound of their own voice, or scripting pauses into presentations to override the urge to rush. The deeper truth, fear's greatest trick, is convincing us that haste is control. But real command comes from the opposite, the willingness to stand in the fire of discomfort until it burns down to embers. Every time you resist the pull to speed through discomfort, you're not just surviving a moment, you're rewriting your relationship with fear itself. Because the pause is where the magic happens, where shaky hands steady, where scattered thoughts coalesce, where the person you're afraid you're not becomes the person you discover you are. Seneca once wrote that the greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, the endless postponement of presence as we fixate on some imagined future. We tell ourselves we'll truly live once we get the promotion, finish the project, or reach the weekend, as if life were a train and we're perpetually waiting at the station. But here's the radical truth Stoicism reveals. Waiting isn't time lost between meaningful moments, it's the raw material of meaning itself. When Seneca advised his friend Lucilius to assemble your life as you go, he wasn't advocating aimlessness. He was mapping a philosophy where presence becomes the ultimate act of agency. Picture walking through a forest with a destination in mind. The conventional approach is head down, pace quick, dismissing everything between you and the endpoint as mere distance to cover. But the Stoic walker does something revolutionary. They invert the equation. That moss-covered stone isn't an obstacle. It's a miniature universe of textures and hues. The bird call overhead isn't background noise. It's a fleeting symphony. This isn't poetic exaggeration, it's tactical awareness. By training yourself to notice what's already here, you're not killing time until something better arrives. You're dismantling the illusion that fulfillment exists only in milestones, not in the ground beneath your feet. Modern psychology confirms this ancient wisdom. Studies on flow states, those moments of complete absorption in an activity, show they occur most often when attention rests fully in the present. A chef lost in the rhythm of chopping vegetables experiences more satisfaction than the diner anxiously awaiting the finished meal. This is Seneca's On the Shortness of Life in action. Not that our days are too few, but that we squander them by mentally inhabiting futures that may never come. The oak tree doesn't rush its growth to become a forest. It draws nourishment from each season's particular light. Practical application begins with redefining what waiting feels like. Next time you're in a queue or traffic, resist the urge to escape into your phone. Instead, conduct a sensory audit. 5 things you see, 4 you hear, 3 you feel touching your skin, 2 you smell, 1 you taste. This isn't mindfulness for its own sake, it's neural rewiring. You're teaching your brain that stillness isn't empty space, but rich terrain. The Stoics called this premeditatio, the premeditation of presence. By rehearsing attention, you prepare for those critical moments when life demands your full engagement. History's greatest innovators understood this deeply. Beethoven composed his late masterpieces while completely deaf, not by straining to recall past sounds, but by becoming intimate with vibrations in his piano and the score's visual poetry. A modern parallel might be the programmer who finds unexpected solutions during a walk, or the scientist whose breakthrough comes while gardening. These aren't accidents, they're the fruits of cultivated presence. Seneca's genius was recognizing that the present moment isn't a waiting room, it's the only workshop where life's real work happens. So the next time you catch yourself thinking, "I'll be happy when," pause. Breathe into the space between intention and attainment. That breath isn't just air, it's the proof that you're already here, already alive, already participating in the very thing you were waiting for. The Stoics didn't just teach patience, they revealed its secret that presence isn't something you give to time. It's what time gives back to you when you stop treating the present like an interim and start living it as the main event. The Stoics had a radical idea they called Amor Fati, the love of fate. It wasn't about passive acceptance but active embrace. Imagine standing at a train station when your departure gets delayed. Most people groan, check their watches, and curse the inconvenience. But the Stoic asks a different question. What if this delay isn't an obstacle, but the exact experience I'm meant to have right now? Friedrich Nietzsche, who later adopted this concept, put it even more starkly. My formula for greatness in a human being is Amor Fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. That's the heart of it, not just enduring life's pauses, but falling in love with their hidden purpose. Take the story of a young architect named Daniel. Fresh out of school, he landed what seemed like his dream job at a prestigious firm, only to be laid off 6 months later during a recession. The initial shock felt like failure. But forced unemployment became his unexpected apprenticeship. With no clients or deadlines, he started designing hypothetical structures, wild, impractical ideas he'd never pitched to a paying client. One of those sketches, shared casually online, caught the eye of an experimental design collective. That detour led to collaborations he'd never have encountered on his original path. The Stoics would say Daniel didn't just survive that career delay, he needed it. The universe wasn't punishing him, it was redirecting him toward a version of success he hadn't known to pursue. This mindset transforms how we perceive time itself. Modern life treats waiting as a thief stealing productivity, momentum, opportunity. But Amor Fati suggests these intervals are more like invisible architects, reshaping us in ways we can't yet see. Consider how trees endure winter. The barren months aren't a punishment, they're a necessary dormancy that allows for spring's explosion of growth. Nietzsche, despite his later reputation as a fiery polemicist, understood this deeply during his own years of illness and isolation. His greatest works emerged not in spite of those fallow periods, but because of them. The Stoics would recognize this pattern instantly. What looks like delay is often the universe's way of composting raw materials into richer soil. Practical application starts with a simple reframe. Next time you're stuck in a literal or metaphorical waiting room, job applications in limbo, a creative project stalled, ask two questions borrowed from Epictetus. What part of this situation depends on me? And what part doesn't? The job seeker can't control hiring timelines, but they can use the interim to learn a new skill that makes them irresistible. The writer awaiting inspiration can't force ideas, but they can cultivate the daily habits that welcome them. Amor Fati isn't about pretending frustration doesn't exist, it's about mining that frustration for its hidden gifts. History's most resilient figures embody this. Beethoven didn't just cope with deafness, he composed his transcendent late works by feeling vibrations in the piano. Julia Child didn't lament starting her culinary career at 37, she leveraged her late start to connect with fellow beginners. Even in nature, the phenomenon of arrested development shows how some organisms pause growth during harsh conditions, only to surge ahead when the environment shifts. The Stoic twist: these aren't exceptions to the rule, they're the rule itself. Every delay contains the blueprint of its own redemption. So the next time life hits pause, remember Nietzsche's challenge: don't just bear what's necessary, love it. That traffic jam becomes a chance to listen to an audiobook that changes your perspective. The failed project reveals a skill gap that once filled, propels you further than quick success ever could. Even grief, the heaviest of life's pauses, can carve reservoirs of compassion we'll draw from for decades. Because Amor Fati isn't just philosophy, it's the art of discovering that what we called waiting was actually becoming. Marcus Aurelius watched rival generals make reckless moves in battle after battle, not because they lacked strategy, but because they lacked patience. In his private writings, he noted how impulsive leaders exhausted their troops chasing quick victories, while his own disciplined restraint allowed Rome to outlast them. Time and patience, he observed, are the strongest warriors. That insight didn't just win ancient wars, it's the same edge separating modern winners from burnout casualties. Take two tech startups launching similar products. Company A rushes to market first, boasting about their speed, sacrificing polish for headlines. Company B delays their launch by 3 months, fixing bugs their competitor ignored. Initially, Company A dominates the news cycle. But within a year, users flock to Company B's stable platform, while Company A drowns in negative reviews and patch updates. This isn't just a business parable, it's a pattern repeating across industries. Amazon famously operated at a loss for years, patiently building infrastructure while competitors chased quarterly profits. Jeff Bezos called this the long-term greedy approach, a direct echo of Stoic persistence. The psychological mechanism behind this advantage is counterintuitive. When we observe a rival moving faster, our brains interpret it as a threat, triggering panic responses. But research from Harvard Business School reveals that acting on that panic leads to a 23% increase in poor decisions. The executive who pauses to ask, "What if slowness is our secret weapon?" often spots opportunities speed obscures. Luxury brands understand this deeply. While fast fashion floods the market with cheap trends, houses like Hermes intentionally limit production, knowing scarcity builds desire that outlasts any trend cycle. Even in personal rivalries, patience delivers unexpected leverage. Consider two junior lawyers gunning for the same promotion. One constantly volunteers for extra cases, works late to impress, and lobbies for visibility. The other focuses on meticulous preparation, deliberately taking fewer assignments but delivering flawless work. Initially, the hustler seems ahead until a high-profile case exposes their rushed errors versus their rival's depth. The Stoic principle here is festina lent, make haste slowly. It's not about falling behind, but about recognizing that sustainable progress often looks like falling behind until suddenly, decisively, you're ahead. History's greatest disruptors mastered this tempo. Netflix could have rushed into streaming when Blockbuster still dominated physical rentals. Instead, they spent years refining their algorithm and infrastructure, letting Blockbuster exhaust itself battling outdated models. The Wright brothers didn't just beat better-funded aviation rivals by building faster. They out-observed them, patiently studying wind patterns others ignored. These weren't passive weights, they were strategic accumulations of tiny, patient advantages that compounded into dominance. The real magic happens when patience pairs with preparation. A boxer conserving energy in early rounds isn't losing their studying tells and conserving stamina for the knockout. In business, this might look like a CEO quietly acquiring niche competitors while rivals chase splashy mergers. Or an artist spending years developing a signature style while peers churn out derivative work for quick sales. Marcus Aurelius captured this perfectly. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Every moment your opponent spends reacting is a moment you spend refining. So the next time you feel pressured to match someone else's pace, remember the Stoic question: what if slowing down is how I speed up? Not all who move slowly are falling behind. Some are building the foundation to leapfrog the race entirely. Because in a world obsessed with sprinting, the real winners are often those who trained for marathons. Epictetus, the philosopher who turned hardship into humor, once joked that if someone tried to insult him but he refused to feel insulted, it was like tossing a rock into a well and hearing no splash. The insult simply vanished into the void. That playful twist captures a profound Stoic truth. Frustration loses its fangs when met with laughter. Imagine sitting at a crowded airport when the fifth delay announcement crackles over the speakers. The man next to you groans, the toddler 3 rows back wails, but the woman by the window chuckles and pulls out a book. She's not ignoring the inconvenience, she's outmaneuvering it. The Stoics didn't just endure delays, they found the absurdity in them because humor doesn't trivialize problems, it defangs them. Take modern air travel, a perfect laboratory for practicing Stoic wit. When your flight's delayed 8 hours due to mechanical issues, which everyone knows means someone forgot to file paperwork, you've got two choices. You can white-knuckle the armrests, refreshing the departure's screen like it owes you money. Or you can channel Epictetus, who quipped, "If someone tried to carry your body through the marketplace, you'd be furious." So why let them carry your mind? Translation: the airline controls the plane's departure, but you control the mental baggage you're hauling around the terminal. That's when you start noticing the comedy. The businessman dramatically sighing at the gate agent as if turbulence were a personal betrayal. The couple arguing over whether to spend $12 on airport nachos like it's a marital litmus test. These aren't just distractions, they're improvisational theater, free for anyone who chooses to watch. The magic lies in the shift from victim to spectator. When Epictetus was enslaved as a child, he reportedly told his master, "You'll break my leg if you tighten those chains any further." The man, startled, loosened them immediately. That wasn't just quick thinking, it was a masterclass in reframing power dynamics through humor. Fast forward to modern frustrations. Your Wi-Fi cuts out during an important presentation. The old you fumes, the stoic you grins and says, "Well, guess we're doing this the 19th century way, with dramatic pauses." Suddenly, the tension isn't gone, it's been repurposed. This isn't about toxic positivity. The Stoics weren't suggesting you laugh while your house burns down, but between minor irritations and genuine catastrophes lies a vast middle ground where humor acts as emotional armor. Research from Johns Hopkins shows that patients who use gallows humor during difficult treatments report 30% less pain. Why? Because laughter creates cognitive distance. It's the difference between being stuck in a traffic jam and narrating your own documentary about urban absurdity. And here we observe the suburban dad contemplating whether honking will magically dissolve gridlock. Practical application starts small. Next time your coffee order gets botched or your train gets rerouted, try the stand-up test. How would a comedian spin this situation? The barrister who writes "Bob" on your cup when your name is clearly Beth isn't inept. She's giving you a free alias for the day. That construction detour adding 20 minutes to your commute. An impromptu scenic tour of neighborhoods you'd never see otherwise. The key is specificity. Generic. Look on the bright side. Platitudes fall flat. But finding the peculiar irony in each hiccup transforms annoyance into material. History's greatest humorists were often Stoics in disguise. Mark Twain famously said, "The secret source of humor is not joy but sorrow." He might as well have been channeling Epictetus, who taught that laughter thrives in the gap between expectation and reality. When your meticulously planned beach vacation gets rained out, you expected sun, but the reality of playing Monopoly in a rented cabin with your kids might become the story you retell for years. The Stoic twist: that gap isn't just where disappointment lives, it's where the best memories are often hiding, waiting for you to stop scowling at the weather app and start seeing the scene. Because here's the secret the Stoics knew. Life's delays and derailments come preloaded with comedic potential like blooper reels from the universe. Your job isn't to edit them out, but to recognize them as bonus features. After all, as Epictetus might say if he were here today, the person who can laugh when their flight's cancelled isn't just passing time, they're reclaiming it. Epictetus cut to the heart of human frustration with a single razor-sharp question. What if the things you desire are actually what enslave you? That might sound extreme until you consider the modern paradox. We have more than any generation in history, yet feel more stretched thin. The connection between patience and desire isn't about deprivation. It's about recognizing that every want we cultivate is a timer we set on our own peace. When you crave the latest phone, you're not just spending money, you're signing up for months of checking shipping updates, comparing specs, and inevitably feeling let down when the next model drops. The Stoic alternative: want less, not as austerity but as liberation. This is where patience transforms from passive waiting into active discernment. Ancient Stoics practiced something called premeditatio malorum, imagining the downsides of their desires before pursuing them. A modern translation might look like this: before upgrading your car, honestly calculate the hours spent negotiating loans, the anxiety of higher payments, the constant worry about door dings in parking lots. Suddenly, that shiny object loses its luster. Epictetus wasn't anti-desire, he was pro-clarity. freedom isn't secured by filling up on what's lacking, he wrote, but by removing the need to fill up. That's the minimalist secret, not owning fewer things, but being owned by fewer things. Consider the Japanese concept of wabi-sabi, finding beauty in imperfection and transience. A cracked teacup repaired with gold kintsugi becomes more valued than a flawless one because it tells a story of resilience. This mirrors the Stoic approach to desire. When we stop chasing the illusion of perfect possessions, perfect relationships, even perfect days, we start appreciating the textured richness of what's already here. The entrepreneur who covets a rival's viral success might miss the quiet satisfaction of their steady growth. The parent obsessing over giving their child every advantage could overlook the joy of simple moments reading together under a blanket fort, not at some Instagrammable theme park. Practical application starts with the desire audit. Take one area: clothing, tech, social commitments, and ask Epictetus 3 questions. 1. Does this align with my core values or society's expectations? 2. What hidden costs, time, mental space, maintenance does this desire carry? 3. If I couldn't have this, what would I gain? A tech executive who applied this realized his obsession with luxury watches wasn't about telling time, it was about feeling validated. Letting go of that craving freed up energy he redirected into mentoring startups. That's the paradox. Wanting less doesn't shrink your world. It expands your capacity to engage deeply with what matters. History's most content figures mastered this. Benjamin Franklin listed frugality as a key virtue, but defined it as waste nothing, enjoy everything. Marie Kondo's decluttering movement isn't just about tidy drawers, it's about creating physical space that mirrors intentional living. Even the slow food movement embodies Stoic desire, discipline, savoring seasonal ingredients rather than demanding strawberries in December. These aren't rejections of pleasure, they're elevations of it, like a chef who prefers 3 perfect ingredients over 20 mediocre ones. They prove that limitation breeds creativity. The ultimate test comes when life forces desire's hand. The athlete who dreams of Olympic gold but suffers a career-ending injury faces a choice: cling to the shattered dream or find meaning in coaching others. The Stoic prepares for this moment by regularly practicing desire moderation, not to avoid disappointment, but to build the flexibility to pivot when plans crumble. Because here's the secret Epictetus uncovered: the fewer rigid expectations we layer onto life, the more room we leave for it to surprise us with something better than we'd scripted. And that's not restraint, it's the art of leaving the door open for joy to enter unexpected. Cato the Younger stood motionless as his political rival hurled insults across the Roman Senate floor. Where others would have retaliated or stormed out, he simply adjusted his toga and continued taking notes, not because he lacked passion, but because he understood the power of measured silence. This wasn't weakness, it was strategic restraint honed through decades of Stoic practice. Cato's contemporaries mocked his deliberate pace, calling him obstinate. Yet history remembers him as the man whose unshakable composure exposed the recklessness of those around him. When Julius Caesar, a master of provocation, publicly handed Cato a love letter meant to humiliate him, Cato read it aloud without inflection, turning the attempted scandal into a lesson about the insignificance of gossip. His patience wasn't passive, it was a spotlight revealing others' impulsivity. Zeno of Citium embodied this principle even more fundamentally. Before founding Stoicism, he lost everything in a shipwreck: wealth, status, even his identity as a merchant. Stranded in Athens with only the clothes on his back, he could have raged against the gods or scrambled desperately to rebuild. Instead, he wandered into a bookstore, discovered philosophy, and spent the next 20 years studying under Crates the cynic. That shipwreck wasn't an ending, It was the slow-burning beginning of a school of thought that would outlast empires. Zeno's most famous teaching, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so we can listen twice as much as we speak," wasn't just about conversation. It was a blueprint for turning life's interruptions into foundations. Modern parallels abound. Consider the late engineer and inventor Dean Kamen, who spent over a decade developing the Segway. Critics mocked the slow rollout, especially when initial sales faltered. But Kamen wasn't chasing quick adoption, he was patiently refining the underlying gyroscopic technology. That same patience later allowed his company to adapt those innovations for life-changing medical devices, including portable dialysis machines and prosthetic arms. Like Zeno's shipwreck, what seemed like a commercial failure became the catalyst for more meaningful breakthroughs. The common thread: these figures didn't just endure delays, they mined them for hidden advantages the hurried overlooked. The brilliance of their approach lies in its counterintuitive timing. When everyone else rushes, the Stoic paces. When others demand immediate results, they invest in iterations. Steve Jobs famously delayed the original iPhone's launch to replace the plastic screen with glass, a decision that cost months but defined smartphone durability for a generation. This isn't procrastination, it's the art of distinguishing between speed and haste. The visionary understands that some ideas need to marinate, some conflicts need space, and some obstacles aren't barriers, they're the raw material of innovation. What separates these role models isn't their capacity to wait, but their ability to remain fully engaged during the wait. Cato didn't disengage from politics during his famous silences, he observed more keenly. Zeno didn't abandon commerce after his shipwreck, he redirected it into the marketplace of ideas. Kamen didn't pivot away from engineering when the Segway underwhelmed, he deepened his commitment to solving harder problems. Their patience was active, not passive, a whetstone sharpening their focus rather than a pillow cushioning their inaction. The lesson for us: mastery isn't found in bypassing delays, but in inhabiting them so completely that they become allies. Every unreturned email, every postponed project, every personal setback carries the same potential. Zeno found in that Athenian bookstore, not to derail us, but to redirect us toward versions of success we couldn't have planned. Because the ultimate power of patience isn't just weathering the storm, it's learning to sail in ways the storm itself teaches. We've traveled through centuries of Stoic wisdom to uncover this counterintuitive truth. Waiting isn't passive, it's the ultimate act of strategic control. Think back to Marcus Aurelius' words that opened our journey. You have power over your mind, not outside events. That power lies in the 3 disciplines we've explored. First, detachment, the ability to observe emotions like weather patterns without letting them dictate your actions. Second, reflection, whether through journaling or silent observation, creating space between experience and response. And finally, intentional action, choosing not just what to do, but when to do it for maximum impact. These aren't abstract concepts, they're tools forged in the fires of real human struggle, from Roman battlefields to modern boardrooms. Consider how differently life unfolds when you apply this triad. That email triggering your frustration, detachment lets you see it as bites on a screen rather than a personal attack. The delayed career opportunity, reflection reveals it as hidden preparation time. Even traffic jams transform when you exercise intentional action, switching from cursing brake lights to listening to an audiobook that sparks your next breakthrough. The Stoics didn't just preach these principles, they proved them under conditions we can scarcely imagine. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire amid plague and war, yet his journals reveal a man who refused to let chaos dictate his inner world. If he could find calm in 3rd century Rome, what might these tools do for your daily life? Here's your challenge for the week ahead. Choose one patience exercise to practice deliberately. Maybe it's the three-breath rule before responding to provocations, or scheduling buffer minutes between meetings to resist rushing. Perhaps it's as simple as letting one inconvenient delay, a long line, a late delivery exist without mental commentary. The goal isn't perfection. It's noticing what changes when you shift from fighting time to working with it. Share your experiences in the comments, not just the successes, but the messy middle moments too. Because mastery isn't born in grand gestures, but in the daily decision to pause when every fiber screams hurry. As we close, return to that traffic jam from the video's opening. The cars haven't moved, but something profound has. You have. Where once you saw stolen time, you now recognize a choice to let impatience shrink your world or to claim those minutes as your own. That's the real gift of Stoic waiting, not just better reactions, but an expanded life, one where every delay becomes fertile ground and every pause whispers possibility. The road ahead will test this, as roads always do, but remember, you're not just learning to wait, you're learning